Hey everyone, John here! And very recently there have been a ton of third-party Switch 2 games, so let's take a look at each and every one of them in one video. And let's begin with the biggest one being Final Fantasy VII Integrate. The demo is just released, you can play through the entire first chapter, and the game is just 1 month away, so this should essentially represent the final product. Now, first and foremost, let's compare it to PlayStation 4, considering that's the closest equivalent to Switch 2. And as you can see, the lighting's actually quite different in quite a few areas. And that's because the Switch 2 version has the PlayStation 5 lighting. The only real parity with PlayStation 4 is the 30 FPS frame rate, and it holds it very, very well. There's a couple of frame time blips that occur throughout combat, but these may be intentional because the game does have stun effects going on. If we go to a very busy scene with lots of explosions, it holds up very well, 30 the entire time. Now let's also put it head to head with PlayStation 5, and this is also incredibly similar visually. Switch 2 does have some artifacts around the hair, and that's quite common with DLSS, which it is using to produce this level of visual quality, but it's nowhere near as distracting as some games like Resident Evil Requiem. For the most part, this looks outstanding. The only real difference is 60 FPS on PlayStation 5 and 30 FPS on Switch 2. But given a lot of us played this on PS4 originally at 30 FPS, it is perfectly playable at that frame rate. So it's ahead of PlayStation 4 in terms of effects and image quality, not quite there with PS5, but very, very close. This may be the best looking game on Switch 2 right now, and a fantastic port of FF7 Remake. Now that's an incredible high to start on, but let's move over to the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. This got a free update for those who have the Anniversary version. If you don't have that, you've got to pay for the Anniversary version, which is around £18, and then you get a free update. So the original Switch 1 version of Anniversary didn't come with many bells and whistles that PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X got. The visuals for the most part were untouched, it didn't get the new water shaders or the new lighting, it was just mostly the Switch 1 version with a bit of extra content. So this Switch 2 upgrade basically brings it up to par with PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. It visually looks very good. This is 1440p upscale to 4K using DLSS, so very, very clean. It runs at 30 FPS, which is underwhelming, but keep into account PlayStation 4 and Xbox One also run at 30. 60 is only a PS5 and Series X thing. So this is all sounding quite good, right? Well, I would not recommend playing this at all. The input latency in this version is outright terrible. The original Switch 1 version was fine, not best in class, but it ran fine. But this time when you flick the stick, it takes so long for it to register in the game. It feels so sluggish to play, like you're playing a cloud version of the game. And they've implemented mouse controls in this version too, which would be appreciated, but it feels even worse with the latency issues. And mouse controls typically work a lot better at 60 FPS rather than 30. So it just feels poor to play. The upgrade itself is fine as a free upgrade, not exactly spectacular for those upgrading from vanilla Skyrim to the Anniversary Skyrim, but the actual visual enhancements, they are good. The game looks a lot nicer with these lighting effects, there's much more foliage, the draw distance is further, there's a lot more grass, it typically looks better. But they really have to fix the latency here. Now let's move on to Red Dead Redemption, and the Switch 1 version was already quite good. It looked better than 360 and PlayStation 3, and it held 30 FPS most of the time outside of Undead Nightmares. But this Switch 2 version brings it all the way to 1440p at 60 FPS. It does it in a bit of a strange way though. The native resolution is 720p, and that's DLSS'd all the way up to 1440p. But playing, you can't tell. There aren't the usual giveaways like hair dithering, it just looks nice. It is a bit odd they did it this way though, as Red Dead should be able to run natively on Switch 2 without DLSS at this resolution, but the results are still pretty good, and it runs at 60 the entire time without any dips. But the real star of the show is mouse controls. When playing Rockstar games on PC, the mouse is really good for aiming, but I don't want to be using a keyboard for driving a car or steering a horse, that's just kind of awkward with digital controls. But with Switch 2 you can play Wii Remote style, split Joy-Con when on foot or on your horse, and then when it comes to aiming, just plop your Joy-Con down on a surface or your leg or the sofa cushion or whatever, and you have really versatile and quick aiming. I was playing this on a train the other day in tabletop mode, and it was really easy to use that table as a mouse and then just go back and forth really quickly. It just felt good. This is my favorite version of Red Dead Redemption by far now, and looks really good in handheld mode as well. Now let's talk about the last game, Divinity Original Sin 2. I've wanted a lot of classic PC games on the Switch 2 because of the mouse. Like, I want RTSs, I want sim-like games, and Divinity was very high on my radar when I saw this got an update. I bought it immediately. I never owned the Switch 1 version prior. I had to play this with a mouse, and I was incredibly disappointed to see it had no mouse controls at all. This is the same controller game that was on Switch 1. That's really disappointing to me, but the upgrade itself is pretty good. Going back to the Switch 1 version of Divinity, this was a 30 FPS game, but of course there were a lot of visual compromises. It ran at 720p at the maximum resolution, so it's quite a blurry game, especially in handheld mode where it goes lower than that. But it's also one of those impossible ports where you give it a little bit of leeway for struggling because it's really pushing ahead of what Switch 1 should be able to do. It's a good port of the game, but not necessarily the best version of the game, and the Switch 2 version upgrades it really nicely. The resolution is a lot higher, the docked frame rate is 60 FPS, which feels really nice, and I specify docked because for some reason, handheld is 30 FPS, and it's very rare that games have that discrepancy between docked and handheld, but this is one that does. And it's a huge shame, because this is the way I'd love to play Divinity, just being able to chip away at it in handheld mode whenever I want to. It's still perfectly playable at 30. I mean, it's a turn-based game, you don't need those quick reflexes, you can play it as slowly as you want. But it is a shame there's no mouse and no 60 FPS in handheld mode. But for a free update, it is good. And that is our board of new third-party Switch 2 games. We have FF7 Remake Integrate, which looks and plays incredibly well. Red Dead Redemption on Switch 2 looks and plays incredibly well. Divinity on Switch 2, it could be better, but what they've done here is very nice for a free update. And Skyrim on Switch 2, which I would avoid until they patch it again, because right now, it is not very good. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, everybody, and we will catch you next time. Bye-bye.
See ya.
What are you, 20-something?
First. Soldier first class. Doesn't go into the 20s.
The hell you talking about? I mean your age, not your goddamn rank. Though for all I know, a soldier's rank could be the same. Guess that make you a 1-year-old. Live and learn.